Welcome to The Explainer. Every single founder, whether they're opening a local coffee shop or building the next big tech company, eventually hits the exact same wall. How do you get the money to turn a great idea into an actual, real-life business? Well, today, we're going to break down that exact playbook. I want you to think about any company you really admire. It could be the little bakery down the street or the company that made the phone you're probably holding right now. They all started from the very same place. That's it. At the absolute core of everything, there's just an idea, a spark, a solution to a problem, a better way to do something. But here's the thing, an idea alone doesn't pay the bills. And that is the fundamental challenge, right? How do you take that spark and fuel it with the cash it needs to hire people, to build things, and to become something real? That's the journey we're going to go on today. Okay, let's dive right in. Before we talk about where the money comes from, we have to get really clear on what it's even for. And when you boil it all down, a business is basically juggling two huge financial needs all at the same time. So think of it like this. On one hand, you're trying to build a skyscraper. That's your future. You're buying the land, the heavy machinery, the big assets that are going to define your company for years to come. But at the same time, you've got to pay the electricity bill and make sure everyone gets their paycheck this Friday. It's this constant balancing act between that big future vision and just surviving the present day. So let's tackle the big stuff first, funding that grand vision. When you need a serious injection of cash for one of those game-changing investments, you come to a massive fork in the road. And really, it all boils down to this single question. Do you sell a piece of your dream to get partners on board? Or do you borrow the money and try to build it all yourself? This right here, this is the great trade-off. It's the choice between sharing the potential rewards and the risks versus taking on a fixed, predictable payment. Let's break down the two main ways this happens: equity and debt. All right, first up, we've got equity capital. I want you to think of your company as a pizza. To get money to buy a bigger, better pizza oven, you sell a couple of slices to investors. Now, those investors, your new shareholders, they own a piece of your business. They share in the profits, but they also get a say in how things are run through voting rights. That's why it's called risk capital, because they're betting on you, and there's no guarantee they'll get their money back. Now, the other path is debt. And sticking with our pizza analogy, this is like just getting a loan to buy that new oven. A common way this is done is with something called a debenture, which is really just a fancy IOU from your company. You promise to pay the lender back, plus interest, over time. But here's the key difference. You get to keep your entire pizza. The people who gave you the loan, the debenture holders, they're just creditors. They're not owners. So they get zero voting rights and no control over your business. And this table, man, it just lays out the whole dilemma perfectly, doesn't it? Just look at that control row. With equity, you give up some control. Shareholders get a vote. With debt, lenders have no say. You keep all the control. But then look at the obligation row. With debt, you're on the hook for fixed payments, no matter what. With equity, they only get paid if the company does well. It's a fundamental trade-off between control and obligation. And honestly, it's a decision that's as much about your personality as it is about the number. So what's the real upside of bringing partners in? Well, for one, that money is permanent. You literally never have to pay it back. If you have a really tough year, there's no legal requirement to pay them a dime. That kind of flexibility can be an absolute lifesaver. Plus, having a strong base of equity can actually make it easier to get a loan later on. But of course, that flexibility isn't free. Equity is often the most expensive way to get money because your investors are taking a huge risk and they expect a huge potential reward. And every time you issue new shares, your own slice of the pie gets a little bit smaller. And, maybe most importantly, you are giving up some control of your baby. All right, let's flip it. What's the good news about taking on debt? The biggest perk is simple. You keep total control. Lenders don't get a vote at the table. End of story. On top of that, the interest you pay is often tax deductible, which can actually lower your tax bill. And because those payments are fixed, you always know exactly what you owe, which makes planning your finances a lot easier. The downside, though, and this is a big one, can be really serious. You are legally on the hook to make those payments, even if your business is losing money. If you can't pay, things can get ugly fast, with legal action and even bankruptcy. That fixed payment becomes a constant pressure, a weight on the business every single month. Okay, so that covers the huge long-term stuff. But what about just keeping the lights on? The day-to-day grind. That requires a completely different toolbox, one that's built for speed and flexibility, not for buying a factory.
One of the most common forms of this is something you might not even think of as finance. It's called trade credit. It's simply when your suppliers give you 30, maybe 60 days to pay your bill. It's basically a short-term, interest-free loan that helps you manage your cash flow, letting you sell your stuff before you even have to pay for it.
But what if you can't wait that long for your customers to pay? That's where this really clever tool called factoring comes in. So imagine you just made a massive sale, but the customer has 90 days to pay you. You need that cash now. With factoring, you can actually sell that unpaid invoice to another company. They'll give you most of the money, say 80 or 90%, right away, and then they take on the hassle of collecting the full amount from your customer. Sure, you get a little less money in the end, but you get it when you need it the most. Okay, to wrap this up, we have to talk about how the game has totally changed. The internet has blown the doors open with exciting new ways for entrepreneurs to get the funding they need, especially when they're just starting out. First, you've got angel financing. These are successful, wealthy people who basically act as angels for brand new companies, investing their own money in exchange for a piece of the business. And listen, they're not just a checkbook. These are often experienced founders themselves, and they're betting on a great team, offering incredible advice, and opening doors you didn't even know existed. And then, of course, there's the incredible power of the crowd. With crowdfunding, you're not pitching your idea to one rich investor in a stuffy boardroom. No, you're pitching it to the entire world on the internet. Thousands of people can back your project with just a few bucks each, usually to get the first crack at your product. It's an amazing way to not only raise money, but also prove that people actually want what you're building. So, after all that, let's bring it back home to the core question. If you had that next big idea, which path would you choose? Would you be willing to sell off pieces of your dream to bring on partners who share the risk and the reward? Or would you rather take on the heavy burden of debt just to keep 100% control of your vision? It is the ultimate founder's dilemma. And the right answer? Well, it depends not just on your business, but on who you are.